Hi there, welcome back to the Serviam podcast. As always, I'm Lucy Steigerwald, your host, and here in the internet studio land, I have two guests today, and they are both volunteers for the extremely cool organization No More Deaths. Welcome to Bryce and Ary. Uh, Thank you for being here today. Let me read a short little bio. Bryce Peterson has been organizing and doing direct aid on the U.S.-Mexico border for 4 years and was involved in recent abuse documentation for No More Deaths. Ary Tischler has been volunteering with No More Deaths for 6 years and is currently working as their social media coordinator. Hi, guys.
Hey,
Howdy.
thanks for having
Thanks
us.
for having us.
I guess the easiest first question: can you tell the good listeners if they don't know what No More Deaths is?
Yeah, for sure. No More Deaths is a humanitarian aid organization. We've been operating in the U.S.-Mexico borderlands since 2004. So we've been around for like 21 years. And yeah, we do various types of humanitarian aid. We have an aid station in the southern Arizona borderlands. We do water drops throughout southern Arizona, mostly in Pima County, but then also in like the western desert and then some in New Mexico. And we run a missing migrant hotline for people who are lost or disappeared in the desert, for their families to call in, and try to coordinate with consulates to find them, um, and as well as an abuse documentation team that does abuse. I mean, yeah, they document Border Patrol abuses, so kind of in the name there. But yeah, we've done a multitude, I think like maybe 8 different types of abuse documentation. So that's looked like um, looking at like detention conditions for people as they go into ICE detention. Yeah, the current one that we've done is the migrant death mapping. So that's the first comprehensive map of migrant remains across the U.S.-Mexico borderland. So that's the whole way from California to Texas. But yeah, we do a lot of different things, but that's like a small gist of what we do.
Um, that's a good picture of it. Can both of you tell me a little bit about kind of what made you as people be inspired to start volunteering?
Um, yeah, sure. That's always a hard question to answer, but yeah, I guess I grew up in California, in a really diverse area, so I had a lot of friends who had migrated as children or adults. It was always just sort of something that was like um, in my head as a very like clear injustice that was happening very publicly, and it seemed like just one of those things that like is always there and didn't seem like there's a huge effort to change anything for the better. It seems like it's just always getting worse. And then so when I moved to Tucson, um, and continued to sort of like be inhabiting the borderlands and seeing more of it. Had the opportunity to volunteer with the Tucson Samaritans, who does a lot of really similar work, and just yeah, got more and more deeply involved in different aspects of it.
Yeah, I think for myself, yeah, I'd heard about No More Deaths through friends doing like benefit shows and stuff,
Mm.
for them throughout the years. And yeah, a friend asked me to like make a t-shirt design, and I was like, oh, what group is this? This is freaking sick. So that's how I found out about No More Deaths. But yeah, then I guess like the drive to do aid work comes from, yeah, I mean, just a general knowingness that like, yeah, the situation in the borderlands is pretty messed up, historically and
Mm.
currently. And yeah, having like a mom who, yeah, immigrated here as well, I think is a good, or is like, yeah, just been like this kind of like forever knowing thing of just like how messed up the immigration system is, and like how difficult it is, for people to um like be in this country when they are like not of it, you know?
Mm.
So I think that that's been like a kind of like well-known thing for me in my upbringing. And I think, yeah, No More Deaths has been like a really interesting and uh, accessible way for myself, and I think a lot of people to plug into aid work in the borderlands.
I don't want to. I guess I have to ask, and if you don't want to sort of tie your your beliefs in with the organization, it's not an official, thing. But do you guys have any sort of personal politics that helped you um, kind of get into this and real like? Is it all just very personal, or is it any kind of ideological belief system?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and we can definitely speak for the organization on that too. I mean, as a org, we're supposed to not be like during like recent court cases that I guess we're like kind of are not supposed to be uh, specifically like abolitionist or something like that, but we're
Mm-hmm.
very expressly abolitionist as an organization. The only thing that's gonna stop, I mean, we're coming from a harm reduction model of like people are dying in the desert. They shouldn't be dying in the desert. It's happening because of U.S. border policy and specific actions of border patrol agents. Um, we're there as witnesses and to like and just to try to as much as we can, which is not a whole lot, reduce the amount of death and suffering that people are going through. Um, but the only thing that's actually going to stop it is drastic changes in U.S. policy and the elimination of the border patrol and ICE and all and any like and the way that we even treat borders just now. So yeah, I've traveled a lot. I've been to Mexico. I've been to a lot of places, and just have seen the different ways that the violence of borders enacts itself on people. Um, and I have a very personal, firm hatred of borders as a thing. And I think No More Deaths is really, really aligned with that. And it's really hard to kind of feel or think any way differently about it when you're out there in person in the places seeing like on the border what we see every day of this really heinous everyday violence enacted on people.
Yeah, I don't really know what else I can add to that. But feel like very, very similarly. And I think that, yeah, as an organization, yeah, we're working from a harm reductionist standpoint, and we are like very much abolitionist. Like
Mm-hmm.
we uh, consistently are calling for the end of and the abolition of Border Patrol and ICE and the border wall and further construction of the border wall too, which is still ongoing, and further militarization of the borderlands where there are so many people that live within that, yeah, not just us, but yeah, people who don't do aid work, and then also, yeah, people who live on nations that, you know, cross the border because land doesn't actually know borders.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, yeah, I think that we are doing our part in trying to like actualize that. And it's a really difficult thing to actually do because the systems that we're up against are are big and yeah.
Are there any figures throughout history that have inspired you guys on this? Like any kind of, or even, more recent history? You mentioned just knowing ordinary people getting oppressed by this very pointless and terrible system. But is there any kind of inspirational people from back in the day or now who have motivated you?
I think everyone who does humanitarian aid work in the borderlands inspires me, especially
Mm-hmm.
people who like are freaking working out of like groups, who are working out of organizations, who are like doing the work from their house with their cars, like with their band-aids. And yeah, I don't know, just like it is, there's so much aid work that is happening outside of the scope of of our group or of other groups. And I think that that's kind of the coolest thing in the world to be like, oh, we can like decentralize humanitarian aid and we can like normalize this in a way that like anyone can do it. So we see that in Arivaca. There's a group called People Helping People that operates out of Arivaca, and their whole kind of mission has been to like decentralize aid or like the giving of aid, and to normalize it. And so that's looked
Mm-hmm.
like just setting up like a station where you could go pick up water, you could pick up a rescue phone, you could pick up medical supplies and canned food, backpacks, clothes, and then bring it to your house. And if someone comes onto your property who's crossing the desert, you could support them yourself. So I don't know. I think like initiatives like
Cool.
that are really cool, and it's super inspiring to just like see people doing it every day for decades, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, Bryce.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think one of the cool things about what we're doing is just that the people I'm most inspired by and I think are just coolest in the world are people that we just actually know and can talk to and hang out with. Like there's people who are involved in like the very beginnings of the sanctuary movement who are still every day involved in stuff that we're doing now, and there's just like a really visible through line between these generations of really awesome um, activists and other people, as well as yeah, I mean the by far the most impressive people are some of the just like really regular people who every day are just as a matter of course, like not even through an organization, just doing like actual mutual aid for people that are crossing through the areas where they live.
Yeah, I mean, I think with like, I don't know, normie sort of coverage, in my experience, I've seen a lot more like, here is a border person mad about all of the immigrants crossing. Not, I just think you generally don't actually hear about people who might have a backpack of aid or other things to help people out. So that's an interesting thing. Being in Pennsylvania and very far from the border, and generally not a very like not a very Spanish speaking area at all. So this is pretty far from me in terms of exact culture, and in that, you know, the actual immigrants. We obviously have some people, um, but it's not really the thing. It's not really a thing in Pittsburgh as much. But
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of. I think it would surprise some people. Like a lot of the really sort of like right wing, anti-immigrant types of people who live in some of these border towns, like in the area that Ari's talking about, Arivaca. A lot of the people that you would sort of think of being like the like like oh these people are going through my yard or blah, blah, all those people. A lot of them just moved there in order to be assholes, and
mm,
there's like a few like specific ranchers that that they always end up on TV or whatever, but I think it would surprise a lot of people the sentiment like when you're actually there, like you hear all these people living there hear all of these like big narratives or whatever from the government now or from the media, all these things, um, and they just kind of like laugh at it because they're like, yeah, of course, that's not what's actually happening right now, and the all most of the narratives around the border, like once you actually go there, really get dispelled, and most of them are one way or the other. Even some of the positive ones, the negative ones, all that stuff is really like applied to the border from externally for the most part, and then when you're there it really just is a whole new different kind of reality sort of opens up.
I wanted to ask you guys a little more detail on Bryce. In the little bio you sent me, says you were involved in recent abuse documentation. Can you elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, I've been pretty heavily involved in the last two abuse doc reports we put out are were mapping projects. The first one was El Paso Sector Migrant Death Database, which collected death data from El Paso Sector, which is New Mexico, El Paso County, and Hudspeth County in Texas, um, and showed uh, showed locations of recovered human remains of migrants who were crossing in that area. It looked at the different the context around why people were dying, not just like that people died in certain areas, but
Mm.
um, exactly where they died and why they died, counting the amount of deaths that were caused directly by Border Patrol rather than just indirectly by Border Patrol. So, like vehicle chases, foot chases, falls from the border wall, in custody deaths, things like that. Compared it with Border Patrol's own database of all the similar stuff in order to show the way that they're misrepresenting the data or even like seemingly intentionally covering up a lot of the data. And then more recently applied that to the rest of the border. So we got um, similar data from California all the way through Texas and have been able to support groups on the ground with that data and then also just uh, have it there for researchers, journalists, other people to use, and then obviously to serve as a memorial to the really huge numbers of people who've died over the past many years crossing the desert.
Well, I guess I also kind of want to know about Ari just working as the social media coordinator and what that entails.
Oh, I I do like yeah, social media stuff, which is like Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, all the fun things. Um, but as with any job in No More Desk, we are non-hierarchical, work
Mm.
horizontally with each other and like work in collective. So, um, I guess maybe that's like the more interesting thing to talk about than doing social media. But
It is.
uh,
we're always interested in non-hierarchical things over here.
yeah, yeah, we
So,
love it. But yeah, I think that that's a really cool part of any job within No More Desk. It can also definitely be really difficult because your boss is like, depending what working group you're in, your boss is anywhere from like, you know, 10 to 100 people.
mm,
Um, and yeah, but in our collective, so we have the um, like abuse documentation, media, fundraising kind of crew. And um, and there's like a few different jobs in that, and that's kind of like a support group for all of the other direct like aid work that we're doing. But yeah, as with any job in No More Dust, working in collective means like yeah, running things past each other and kind of any decision you make, I feel like is often yeah, run past a large group of people, involves lots of communication and hence things can be a bit slow sometimes, I think,
mm,
because yeah, it's not just, you, it's a bunch of other people who are also inputting their ideas and opinions on decisions, which is slow, but it's like good and I think important. And yeah, and for social media stuff, that looks like me writing things and making things and like running it past our crew of people, and having other people's big smart brains like chime in and support with stuff. But yeah, I think a cool thing with our media is like, yeah, we really try to center other groups and like use our platform to uplift allied organizations, and groups kind of like across the world doing, yeah, different types of solidarity work that I think as a core belief we believe like relates directly to us because of US imperialism and
mm,
um, yeah, just kind of like the war on migrants abroad. And that's not just in the US Mexico borderlands, but that's in Palestine, Gaza right now.
mm,
And not on immigrants, but more so like, the economy of war and militarization as its a whole. And then, yeah, in the Mediterranean Sea, obviously, on the Poland-Belarus border. Um, yeah, so I think we really try to like tie in a lot of concepts and a lot of like different types of militarization abroad into the work that we do because that's important to remember
mm,
that it's not just like where you are that's happening, it's also all of these other places. Um, and yeah, I think we have a lot of folks who do aid work with us who also like go and do different things in different parts of the world, supporting immigrants and people who are facing oppression and war and genocide. And so that makes it pretty helpful to be like, oh, these people that we know and work in the desert with are also like doing these direct things and can, yeah. can tie in that loop a little bit easier.
Um, I guess I'm curious. I don't know if you thought about this, but kind of what the average person's impression of what No More Deaths does is. Like, are you aware of? Because I like to imagine that like the water drop thing should be relatively uncontroversial unless you're actually the border patrol and what have you. But like I don't know if this is ever like seen as non ideological. Kind of like what is I don't like what the average person thinks of the organization and whether like there's an element of selling this as like this is just obvious human stuff and you don't have to be scared off by like the politics per se. I mean like it's nice and Christian maybe sounding to give out water and stuff. Like I don't know.
Yeah, the organization like did start off. It is like a faith-based organization, and I think that you can take that as you will, and that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that everyone involved with it is like rooted in a faith system that drives them to do aid work. Um, but I think there are still a lot of people who like do, and there's also a lot of people who do it because, yeah, for more like politically aligned reasons. And um, yeah, I think it really depends where you are and who you're talking to,
Mm-hmm.
about the impression of our work. Um, but yeah, I think that there was like a really good, I hope, like, yeah, precedent set during the trials, like during like the Scott Warren US government trials, about like kind of solidifying the idea that aid work isn't a crime, and not that like that wasn't solidified before, but like it felt like more so, yeah, it just like set the standard that like, okay, yes, what you are doing is something that is like the bare minimum, like
Mm-hmm.
what we are doing is the bare minimum, to support people in like efforts for them not to die or be disappeared. Um, and I think too that as like more of that pops up, yeah, I think with any harm reduction or mutual aid, like as one thing happens and another group forms and then another group forms and like it just keeps kind of getting like bigger and bigger, that hopefully um, helps like reframe the narrative of what's being done. Does that make sense? It's like, um, yeah. But Bryce, you have things to say.
Um, yeah, just I mean, what you said, the Scott Warren trial really like showed um, showed what we're doing in a really public way, and it seems like we received a huge amount of support, both nationally and also even just in Tucson. Like our signs were
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. There Yeah, there were really just there wasn't a lot of people who there was like maybe like one neighborhood of people that seemed like they were not into it or something. But yeah, I was at the DMB and was wearing a No More Death shirt, and the person behind the counter was like, "Oh, I know about you guys. You guys are great." Um, I think the sort of like
That's good.
inherent Christianness of it, of like
Mm-hmm.
Jesus was literally out there like giving people water all the time. It's like the most like you said, it's just extremely non-controversial, and the fact that we've won all those court cases, it's like it's exceedingly. I mean, BP does it all the time, trying to say that like we're aiding and abetting or all these things or whatever, which legally speaking is not true. And um, I think it's just really hard to portray what we're up to as bad in any kind of like moral sense, and also really hard to portray what border patrol is up to on the like on the ground level that we see as anything but bad. Especially like we have those videos of border patrol like actually kicking over our gallons and like dumping them, slashing them and stuff. And um, it's like you see water left out for people so that they won't die, and you see people slashing those water bottles, and you wonder which person is the bad person. It's like, yeah, I think it's pretty easy to yeah, it's pretty easy to not feel like overly political. I know, even though like obviously wanting people to not die who are actively like being killed by your government is an inherently very political thing. Um, there's like Tucson Samaritans, for instance, are they talk about being not political. Their stance is that they're not a political organization in any kind of way, even though it is like an inherently political thing. And I think that's like a really strategic move on their part to stay out of the news and to not try to like get any to have minimum pushback from Border Patrol to be able to kind of like safely do the work that they do out in the desert, and our and that's great for them. But our strategy is definitely a bit different from that and more confrontational.
Yeah, it's interesting, the idea of wanting to stay out of the news, because I'd love a quick rundown of the Scott Warren thing. I definitely remember when that happened, and I do remember, again, sort of mainstream coverage of this, and it was not, I didn't see anyone just like cheering Border Patrol or this attempted prosecution of, of aid. But at the same time, I wonder if, like, I'm not surprised that No More Deaths got positive attention with an absurd attempt at prosecution. I wonder if the sort of daily stuff, even when it's like good proper aid, it has the same um, kind of positive impression. But can I don't know, like, can anyone run down the Scott Warren thing really quickly in case people don't know what happened there?
That's an Ari question for sure.
Um, yeah, I'll try to do a rundown. My brain is very fried today. So I'm gonna do it simple. But yeah, Scott Warren is a volunteer or was a volunteer with No More Deaths, does stuff out in the Western Desert out in Ajo. Um, and I'm gonna get the dates all mixed up, but I think it was like 2018.
I believe that's what I
Um,
saw. I think.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 2018, and he was rendering aid at our aid station out in Ajo that we share with the Tucson Samaritans, or sorry, the Ajo Samaritans. And he was rendering aid to two men. Border Patrol came into the barn, like knocked on the barn, and arrested him for allegedly harboring and smuggling. I think that was the charges that he got. Um, and also another charge, I think, for conspiracy something. Does that sound right to anyone? Yeah.
Conspiracy
Um,
is incredibly vague, is my understanding. Like,
for
it's
sure.
really.
Yeah. And so that trial went on, I think, for 2 years. I think it ended, what, beginning of 2020, he was acquitted. Um, but yeah, it was all he was doing was giving these two guys who crossed through the desert a place to stay, medical
Mhm.
attention, food, and water. So these are like the bare basic, kind of like all that we do when
Mhm.
we interact with people in the borderlands is that. And so he was doing that, and yeah, went through trial for 2 years, almost 2 years, and was I think like potentially facing some jail time, but it wasn't like I don't know. I think folks felt maybe pretty chill with that. But yeah, he was acquitted on charges, and it set such a precedent for aid work, like we were saying before, for this idea, and also like the campaign that was done around it in Tucson, just like locally, was freaking massive, and I think had a really big um, was a really big reason that the trial went the way that it did.
Mhm.
And so essentially, it was like yeah, the folks involved in the campaign and doing social media stuff and just media stuff in general for the Scott Warren trial. It was like so strategic of like, let's just get this out as much as we can. Like, let's put yard signs up everywhere and like do like the full 9 yards of what we can do to make sure that it's not just about Scott, but it's more so about like the concept of aid work and the concept
Mhm.
of criminalization of that aid work. Um, because the focus isn't just like Scott as a person and Scott who is like getting arrested, but more so the idea that like anyone, if Scott can get arrested, it's like anyone can get arrested for doing this like simple act of like kindness and like humanity. Um, and we saw that happen like on the Tohono O'odham Nation, and we see that happen, I think, a similar time to Scott's trial. There was a similar trial for a Tohono O'odham um, like elder woman for doing a really similar thing, and I think she ended up going to jail for it. So um, I think that also speaks to like a level of privilege in the work that we do. So
Sure.
we are backed by an organization that has 20 plus years of like history um, and like yeah, we have like a relationship to the border. We have a relationship to Border Patrol and like the government as well. It
Hmm.
looks, I think, pretty bad for the government to try to arrest aid workers with no more deaths.
Hmm.
But it doesn't look that way for people who are just like living in the borderlands, especially for people who are brown, indigenous, black, people of color. Um, and so I think that that's like a really important thing to, yeah, have an awareness of when thinking of like No More Deaths in the Scott Warren trial and
Hmm.
the relationship to violence, not just that towards migrants, but also towards aid workers. And I think that being an aid worker, you have like this kind of safeguard a lot of the time around your exposure to those things in ways that, yeah, people of color, indigenous people in the borderlands just like don't have that protection. Um, and yeah, just important to remember that, yeah, there is like a privilege there. So
Do you think the amount of attention like on Scott Warren actually, well, I would assume it helped him, but it does that kind of did that trial itself help the cause at all in any tangible way? Or is it just
yeah,
sort of a moment of like, wow, that's a bad prosecution attempt?
yeah, I mean, I think it helped No More Deaths, or like one organizationally in like
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, it was like big national news for a while, and so much of like our fundraising that we've like had for the last few years has been from that trial. Um, and beyond that scope, I do think that, I don't know, I was listening to a podcast with some, I think it was like the Borderlands Relief Collective folks were doing some podcasts a few years ago, and they were talking about the trial, the Scott Warren trial, and they were like, yeah, like this thing happened, and then we were like, I don't know, there was just this moment of like, oh, we can like do this too, like the the concept that was kind of set in stone for a lot of people of just being like, yeah, aid work isn't a crime, like you can do this. I think that that was like a really big thing that came out of that trial was the recognition that like, yeah, humanitarian aid isn't a crime. Like it's on every yard sign, and
Hmm.
you can also, yeah, like get your homies together and like go out and find trails and yeah, interact with the borderlands in that way to support the people moving through it.
I guess I want to ask a little bit about the mostly horrible news of late, with some, bright spots of fighting back. But um, does No More Deaths have sort of a plan for just border patrol's suddenly enormously increased budget and things like that, and just for like the times as they are now and stuff?
I don't know if we have a plan. I'm gonna actually say certainly that we don't have a plan. I think when we think of like, yeah, we go into our doom and gloom land occasionally, and
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us don't want to like enter it because it's hard to think of a way uh through yeah, just thinking of like when Trump got elected and we were like, oh shit, like we should like come up with a plan or like rethink
Mm-hmm.
about our strategies and rethink about what we're doing. And like we all sat down around a fire and we were like, oh, this happened like 4 years ago. Like this happened
Mm-hmm.
also during Biden. Like, these
Mm-hmm.
things like they get thrown our ways, or that like happen in the borderlands and affect the people crossing through. None of it's new. And it'll last for 2 months and then it may dissipate and then it may change. And like it's just nothing is constant, I
Mm-hmm.
think, in regards to the border and like militarization. And so it is just really hard. And we don't know what it looks like until it happens too. Like we
Mm-hmm.
don't know what the amping up of Border Patrol surveillance and militarization actually looks like in the field, because a lot of the time it can just be like all talk, or yeah, the effect of it isn't actually as big. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's really hard for us to like look into the future on those things. And
Mm-hmm.
we are, I think that the thing that No More Deaths like volunteers are the best at is just responding to crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is what the situation in the borderlands is like an ongoing 20-year long crisis. Um, and yeah, I think we just like respond to those things as they come up. It's hard to like really think a situation through in the or like beforehand when we don't know how it's actually going to look, is my long-winded answer to that.
Well, I guess my other thing is like not to get bogged down in like weird what about ism or anything, but to me it seems like at least over the last decade, like under Trump, the mainstream cares a lot more about immigrants, and they're plenty bad shit under Biden by all means, but the sort of more focused backlash to Border Patrol stuff seems to happen when Border Patrol itself is more focused and a little more aggressively, you know, Stephen Miller run or whatever the fuck. But like, is there any? I mean, I don't know. Like, what's worse is having kind of this being ignored status quo situation under a Joe Biden, or have this sort of enthusiastic, terrifyingly enthusiastic, like energy for just being as brutal as possible. Like, um, I think I was most surprised of late by by the attention span that they have for the horribleness. You know, it wasn't just a little cudgel to be elected. It was like a continued focus in being as brutal to immigrants as possible. Um, I don't know, kind of which situation is worse, or if it's sort of it is in fact the same thing.
I think there was a lot of backlash against some, like there's the kids in cages things in
Mm-hmm.
um, under Trump, and I remember Trump, I think in the like debate was like, "Who built the cages, Joe? Who built the cages, Joe?" With like the implication it was like Obama that built the cages or whatever, which like that was a sick quote on Trump, but um, yeah, I think like it's maybe easier to view it, or more useful to view it less in like these administrations and more just like in terms of what's actually happening on the ground. There's definitely just a through line through all of the administrations of each administration, building off of what the previous administration did. Things were like, in terms of very certain things, the like border patrols culture was definitely less horrible under Biden, but in terms of like policies, especially affecting asylum seekers, Biden definitely made things a lot worse for a lot of different people, mixed with the sort of like more invisibility of it, and like this sort of like thing that came up during the Biden administration where the right was like really good at creating this narrative around like, oh, Biden's just letting everybody in or whatever, which is actually
I
like
know.
the opposite of what he was doing. He was really like making things a lot worse for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, but then had an additional like pressure to make things even worse because of this sort of like narrative that the right was pushing. Um, and uh, yeah, so I don't know that like one of those situations is worse. I think um, yeah, under Trump, we got a lot of support and things like that. This time around, his attacks on everything are so widespread and brutal that the amount of like, and just like pulling federal funding away from a lot of different groups has really like diminished the amount of like material support that people can really give to any individual organization. So I know our fundraising has been really affected by some of those dynamics, and kind of like the that effect of like kids in cages or whatever, the like the broad distaste for what he's up to definitely seems like less of a thing this time around. Um, so yeah, I don't know, yeah, how to tie any particular thing to any particular administration aside from just like kind of like I was saying before, the thing that you actually see like when you're there in person is very different from like the sort of mainstream uh, media cycle.
Yeah, I think too, like, yeah, border militarization just didn't start with Trump, and I, ICE didn't start with Trump. Like deportations didn't start with Trump. So just I think it's maybe easy for or like hard for people who are like just now in the last like handful of years thinking about immigration as like a problem or like
Hmm.
people being affected by these policies as a problem, kind of just relate it to Trump and it's just so not the case, like
Yeah.
we've just seen decades and decades of brutality, violence, discrimination, and racism against immigrants and yeah, it's not new. And it
Hmm.
doesn't start and it also doesn't end with Trump.
Is there one sort of magic wand, like law, or that would at least make this a little less bad that, that you could use if you had said magic wand? Like, is there a one thing that would not fix it but make things a bit less horrendous?
I think there's a lot of individual policies that just one of them uh, would make things a lot better. I mean, like the checkpoints, the fact that there's like internal U.S. checkpoints, or whatever, is the reason why people have to hike these great distances to get really deep into the country. They have to go like super far through the desert into some like really dangerous areas. All this stuff um, purely because of the checkpoints. I mean, there would definitely, if it was just border patrol out there on foot, there would still be a lot of horrible things happening. But getting rid of the checkpoints is like, I mean, nobody wants a checkpoint. Like no U.S. citizen, no anybody wants a checkpoint. Um, that would be huge. But really, just like it's the entire, the original sin. Obviously, there has been different ways that people have been oppressed and killed, and the border just like existing as violence for many, many, many years. But the stated policy of prevention through deterrence, 1994, is this like sort of like classic origin story now of like they started securing the border, quote unquote, in this very specific kind of way with the stated intention of people dying, and then that's exactly what happened. And it really felt like a I wasn't there, but
Mm-hmm.
to volunteers who were there, the origins, no more deaths, Tucson Samaritans, all these things, it felt like this like acute crisis that was going to last a few years, and then once people came to their senses and we like managed to um, overturn this policy, then the deaths would end. It was like the deaths had a very clear cause, and since then it's only increased. We've seen like really unheard of levels of death that don't even make the news anymore, even though it's so
Mm-hmm.
much worse than it ever has been. And yeah, and so there's this idea of like, oh well, we could make a little better, a more humane border policy, but none of it goes back to that original thing that just caused all of this. It used to be that you know two people would die and it would be on the local news of like, hey, this thing happened or whatever. Now hundreds of people die and you're lucky to see any kind of news article anywhere about it. And so like, yeah, the idea of like, okay, one policy we could remove or one way to make it a little better or whatever is just like just kind of upsetting because it wasn't that long ago. We were kids, we were around um, when this policy happened that literally started this whole thing into motion, and it actually doesn't have to be happening at all.
Yeah, I agree with everything Bryce said. Yeah, I hate prevention through deterrence. Get rid of prevention through deterrence. And yeah, like you said, internal checkpoints. Not only, I guess, just I hate internal checkpoints, and I just want to like elaborate on that because they're, yeah, not only so detrimental to people crossing the borderlands because they're trying to circumnavigate them to get around, to get north. Um, but for yeah, this yeah, so many people who live south of checkpoints who, yeah, like I said before, are like brown, black, POC, indigenous folks. having to cross through checkpoints, which are like agents just profile people crossing
Hmm.
through. There's been like um, I think we did a report on it, or like some group did a report on like maybe the Aravaca checkpoint, and the ways in which like people are profiled going through there. There was a really big protest around that too from Aravaca folks to try to get that checkpoint removed because it was such a detriment for the folks who live in Aravaca in this rural town and are trying to get out to, Tucson or Green Valley. Um, and yeah, having to cross through that every single day and be harassed by agents. And then we also on the Tohono O'odham Nation, which is west of Tucson, to get out of the nation, there's checkpoints in every direction. So that deeply affects nation members who are
Yeah.
living on like their tribal lands that is cut through with a border wall, which is then intercepted
God.
with, like internal checkpoints. So yeah,
Yeah.
just like the layers of militarization there. Like prevention through deterrence and yeah, checkpoints not have only like militarized the border for migrants, but also just people who are living on land that is stolen from them anyways.
Hmm.
And I think that's like one of the biggest heartbreaks for me of the borderlands is just like witnessing that like real time, like, yeah, racism and colonization just kind of like continue to happen to people who have been like the most oppressed and the biggest, yeah, like victims of colonization, and like the US war industry. So, um, yeah, death to both of those things.
I remember at least one very stereotypical white guy, like Dale Gribble-esque white guy, who used to do basically drive up to internal immigration checkpoints and like just like not do anything they told him to do. And that made me real misty eyed for whatever type of conservative that is, who at least is like, as an American, this is an insult. That to me always seems like it gets worse. Is that like we will actually screw ourselves, just so we can screw other people in the process, and that is a concerning human quirk, I guess.
That's nice to call it a quirk.
Yes. Oh, actually, so I wanted to ask. I'm never very chronological here, but like one aspect that really concerns me is that like as climate change increases, there's going to be more and more people who, I mean, they have to move already. It's not to imply that they don't, but they're really going to have to move, like including people whose actual living space is going to be washed away and stuff. Like I find it a really frightening thought to imagine how you fight that when things get more dire for even like the middle class people and they're more susceptible to this like ridiculous fear of immigrants. And I don't know, again, like how you even prepare for that, or if the whole point of you guys is you just give the water and that's probably better than just worrying about the next 3 decades. But I don't know if that's a concern, is like it's all dehydration and having to move. Like that's going to get worse and worse, I would imagine.
Yeah, in terms of what we do is like real caveman stuff. It's like not we put water in the desert, and when we see somebody that looks like they're not doing well, we help them out. And um, that's certainly not going to change regardless. The push factors have changed; they've remained the same. There's been like different people coming from different places, different ways that they're coming through. That's like always changed, but what we're up to definitely stays the same.
Mm-hmm.
I think uh, one thing that definitely is that does change is border patrol and sort of like U.S. policy response to like how they're how they're enforcing things based on those things. I mean, the fact that like so much effort goes into border militarization and not a lot of effort goes into helping to um, helping to actually like do any environmental remediation, which in a lot of these places the damage is caused by like U.S. industrial enterprise, um, is I think really telling of kind of the strategy. The U.S. is going to be like through both like the way that we're militarily able to strong arm people, and then also just through like our where we're at, like in terms of like latitude and geography, we're going to be in a much better position and more able to withstand a lot of the like immediate effects of climate change than other people are.
Mhm.
I mean, we keep thinking of like, you know, oh, when the apocalypse happens, or oh, when climate change hits or whatever. But the apocalypse is already happening in a huge amount of places. People are leaving their homes because of climate change all over the world. And a lot of those people are coming to the United States. And so it's this like, it's a choice that the U.S. has made to um, to deal with that situation militarily rather than
Mhm.
using our vast amount of wealth to do anything that would actually allow people to stay in their homes. People who generally are not stoked to come to the United States, but are coming
Mhm.
here as like a necessity in order to survive the things that they're currently going through.
Yeah, I think it's also like on the US government and like specifically the current administration, thinking of like climate change specifically, to be like, oh, climate change actually doesn't exist. Like,
Right.
every few years, like it's like, oh, this thing is happening, and the way that it is like pushing people out of their countries uh is like is very easy to see, Like I think a lot of people are like, oh, this makes sense. Yeah, there's like all these hurricanes that keep happening. People can't farm and tend to their land that they've lived on for decades. Um, Climate change, like this is the cause, and then the government
Mhm.
is like, what do you mean? That's not even a problem. That thing doesn't exist. And so I think that that's also a thing that like just in the big scale we see in the borderlands all the time. And
Mhm.
I think just like politically, if you are someone who is apprehensive of the US government at all, you can see that in so many ways of like you see a problem and you see the link and the causation of the problem, and our government is like, oh, well, that's not real. Or like, oh, well, racism doesn't exist. Or, oh, like, yeah, like the climate doesn't change. There'll be trees forever. So I think that yeah, that's part of like a very big problem there in the same way that like they yeah, don't like haven't accepted like asylum seekers from Mexico, for so
Mhm.
long, or it's really difficult for people from Mexico to get asylum because if just another metaphor in my rambly brain of like, yeah, if they were to, accept a lot of Mexican asylum seekers, they'd be recognizing that the state of violence and war in Mexico is a problem, and then that would affect, uh, the trade between Mexico and the U.S. and our relations. And so, I don't know. I think that yeah, there's a lot of things that we are like currently witnessing and dealing with, and um, yeah, may actually never just be fixed because the government that we live under doesn't want to recognize like the harm it has caused for decades. So yeah, we'll
Mhm.
just keep leaving water in the desert and running an aid station.
Well,
um,
that's pretty good. I guess those of us who are don't know how to help, especially those of us like me who live very far from at least the southern border, like sort of is there good advice for getting started with involvement and aiding people in some way? Where do you start?
um, I think that there's so many like immigration support or like migrant support coalitions in so many different cities doing grad work for asylum seekers, people who were like you know, recently moved to the States. Um, yeah, so supporting those networks, like where you live, researching that and helping out is sick. I think if folks want to support our work, you can donate to us. Our website is nomoredeaths.org. And if you want to volunteer, you can come volunteer with us. We just changed our programming to be that so you can come out for either 2 weeks or 3 months at a
Mhm.
time. So just to make it a little bit more accessible for folks because we only used to do a 1 month program. But yeah, you can do that and come out, and you'll have housing and food stipend, and you'll meet a lot of really sweet, sweet people. We'll take you out to the desert and go on nice, beautiful water drops and look at nice sunsets and yeah, learn how to if you don't already know how to use a compost toilet and clean compost toilet for dozens of people and make food and hang out, drive big
Mhm.
trucks. So yeah, volunteering is a great thing. If you live out of town, you can come and stay with us and join us for aid work. Um, yeah, Bryce?
Um, yeah, too. There's so we two things. First, we have a big name or whatever, but there's groups all along the border. You don't have to come from South Texas to Arizona to get involved in like exactly this kind of work. You don't have to come from San Diego to here. Um, you should, and then we can come there and we can all be friends or whatever. But I think like looking locally is super important, and
Mhm.
the southern border has creeped all the way down to like the entire country of Mexico is now
Right.
essentially our southern border. It's also creeped north over the years to the point where the border just is in Philadelphia. And I think like right now in particular with all of the sort of energy around resistance to ice, it's actually a really good time to be involved in like local rapid response and other
Mhm.
things. And I think through that you can start to also connect with other groups that are that exist almost everywhere in the country that are really cool. They may be like, I think No More Dust, there's this like idea of what we do as like, like this sort of like sexy humanitarian aid work or whatever. But I think like some of the most valuable stuff um, is a lot of the work that like Ari was talking about of like accompaniment or getting involved with these like rapid response groups or legal aid, any number of things that happen because even getting into the country is by far uh, not not where even like the most harm happens to people. The journey doesn't end once they make it through the desert and then now they're in
Mhm.
the promised land in the United States. So I think like really connecting wherever you're at. I mean, even if you do come to the border here, come back and try to um, connect what you've learned to the spaces that you currently live in, because I guarantee there's some heinous stuff going on there too.
I'm sometimes I hope that if people were aware of the Supreme Court in the early 70s basically deciding that two-thirds of America is technically under border patrol jurisdiction, they might actually be upset about that. But I don't know. I don't think people are aware of that, no matter how much the ACLU has tried to tell them on that one page. But
What do you
it does
mean? We
seem
have
like,
100-mile border that
yeah,
exists everywhere.
that math does not come out very nicely, even for pasty white U.S. citizens, and it's tempting to kind of hope that they figure that out one day. I don't know. I wanted to ask a couple of short lightning round ask questions to finish up. If we could do that. And the first thing is literally just optimism or pessimism.
Oh man. Um, yeah, I know it's supposed to be lightning round, but I mean kind of both always.
Mhm.
Like there's a lot to be really scared about right now, but
Mhm.
also there's a lot of ways in which it's like it really like I think there's limits, and I guess my main optimism is just that like one thing that Trump is doing is he's making the veil very thin, and I think it's
Yeah.
hard to have a conscience and believe some of the stuff that was like actually like pretty mainstream a year ago.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I don't know, but again, it's like
Both is an
impossible
acceptable
to
answer.
predict any kind of you know yeah
Mhm.
future or lack of.
I think optimism because you have to. That's literally the only reason. I
I
don't
like
think,
that too.
yeah,
Yeah,
I just
Way
feel
better
like
answer.
they're both good. They're both correct. So
I mean, it's like none of it's a surprise. It's like we've been here before and it's horrible. The things that are, yeah, I don't know, just like people who are so deeply affected by this, who are being deported right now, who are being torn away from their families, like, is so messed up. And it's not new. And uh, we as people of like care and uh, I don't know, have like we've worked through this before, and like people who have been like, yeah, it's just none of it's new. And I think that like as it continues to happen, we find ways to like work harder at fighting back and like creating like tighter networks of care that are, expansive in regards to like the land that we live on and the ways that we can support each other and support people who are being like the most harmed in these moments. So I think optimism, because like forced optimism, because we have to and we actually don't have a choice to be like pessimistic, is my take on kind of everything and especially what's happening right now. Um, yeah.
I'll try to remember that because I need some mandatory optimism myself. Worst U.S. president of all time?
Isn't that guy probably that guy that got shot after like 2 months? Which one was that? He was, or like he got sick or something. He like didn't wear his hat, and then he got sick because he didn't wear his hat. Like that's pretty. Yeah, you
I
kind of
believe
biffed it on that whole presidency thing.
I believe Harrison lasted about a month, but poor James Garfield didn't have much chance to do anything, and he actually did get shot. He didn't have it coming the way McKinley did. I'll say that much.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm just gonna say
Um,
Trump for right now. He's just made my life and the life of outside of immigration, but like for all of the homies who are trans, people
Hmm.
who, yeah, like want healthcare. I don't know. I'm just like, oh, you've actually like done some damage, my guy,
Hmm.
for all of the people I care about and love in my life. So, yeah, he's definitely up there right now.
Um, can you recommend like one piece of media that might get someone, to really get a sense of immigration as a thing? Like what might change a mind or might just teach them something about it more than they know?
um, yeah, Harsha Walia wrote a couple recent really good books about immigration and borders and violence and all that stuff, which is a really good like go to. This last year, John Washington, who's a friend of No More Deaths, just came out with a book that's like specifically for this purpose. It's called The
Mm,
Case for Open Borders.
okay.
Even if you already know a lot of stuff, it's a really good, like, just really simple, engaging book that kind of like in a really easy to read and sort of like re-explain way breaks down um, kind of a lot of the like really common like misconceptions about
Mhm.
the border and what's going on, and that's a really good one to like give to your uncle or just like read yourself so that you like know
Mhm.
what to say. um I don't know. Yeah, Ari.
Yeah, I was gonna say the John Washington book. Um, yeah, yeah, both of those, hard to recommend.
Yeah, there's the Border Chronicle is a local border news thing that has this Todd Miller and Melissa Del Bosque, local border reporters who have just really good like kind of updated things about like especially kind of like really nitty gritty details of border life and border militarization that I think you just kind of don't get anywhere else, especially if if you live in Arizona or Texas or New Mexico. I think it's a really good really good thing to just like uh, subscribe to.
I guess I still want to ask the first stop, uh, if you have a time machine, where you would like to stop or when, I guess.
Uh, this might be like a baby Hitler type situation, so I don't know if I can legally.
I think you can legally threaten Hitler and baby old Hitler.
Well, no, it's not. It's not Hitler. That's the problem.
Oh, that's right.
Ooh, who
Of
are you
course,
trying
I
to thread
understand.
it?
Like for baby Hitler and any other babies, if you just kidnap them and put them on a doorstep like 4,000 miles away, I bet you've changed things enough that it's so. Just
Yeah,
kidnap the babies.
yeah. Put them on a doorstep in Siberia in the winter.
Possibly. I do like to ask Star Trek or Star Wars.
Uh, Star Trek all day. Although we have a friend who recently was involved in the flotilla, who makes a really good case for we're definitely in like a sort of Star Wars era at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so might have to kind of redo some of my reading on that one.
Fair enough. Good answer.
Um, Wait, is Andor Star Wars or Star Trek related?
Yes.
Wait, it's Star Wars related?
Andor's,
Yes.
yeah, which I
Okay.
haven't watched yet, even though everyone
Okay.
tells me to. So,
It's sick, and I watched it with that same friend who was just on the flotilla a few summers ago in the 110 Tucson heat when we lived together, and we just sat inside watching Andor for like days, and it was amazing. But yeah, that was a good one. That speaks of good revolution in my head.
fair enough. Very good. And let's say, uh, best concert you ever attended.
Oh, easy one. Sturgis Motorcycle Rally went to a Metallica cover band show or tribute band, cover band, one or the other. Um, and all the ingredients were just right. It was like just completely out of control. Um, had you know, yeah, way too much fun in a crowd full of some of the worst people you'll ever meet in your life.
That's awesome. I believe those people have definitely made me have to sleep in the car once or twice. That Sturgis is always, whenever I'm around there, it's full of those people, I guess. But fair enough.
Mine is just good old wholesome Michael Hurley at a prime, like 83 years old, watching him trumble over every word. I love it.
Hey, sometimes the 80 year olds can get it done.
Oh, yeah.
Um, oh, and the traditional question of how would I buy a cappuccino in your political utopia?
I'll just make you one. You don't have to buy it.
Fair enough. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I would take a cigarette for it. I can't find my smoke, so yeah.
Barter is also acceptable. It's
Yeah, yeah,
always
yeah.
good. Um, well, you did say, but let's say it again. Where the listeners can find, well, where they can find No More Deaths and where they can find you if you wish to be found on the internet, if you wish to tout your personal sites and social medias as well.
I shall not tout my personals, but you can find No More Deaths at No More Deaths. Maybe underscore No Más Muertes on Instagram. Maybe the same on Twitter. I think Twitter is
Mm.
actually just No More Deaths, and then Blue Sky. Maybe No More Deaths dash or underscore No Más Muertes. Um, yeah, that's where you can find us on the internet. You can find us not on socials at nomoredeaths.org. You can find all of our abuse documentations there under the abuse doc on our website to read and learn more about Border Patrol abuses and yeah, how all of that relates to the work that we do on the ground.
Um,
Same
and
answer.
okay, I figured that's why it's a little trickier. Trying to balance because I know you guys are interesting, but I don't want to make you, um, you know, if you don't want the people to follow you. That is good. That is fine. That's probably
Yeah, don't contact me.
I will not. Don't worry.
No, you can contact me. But strangers, no, please, for the love of God.
Fair enough.
You got nothing to Spain.
My non-specific on the air, just because relative did volunteer for you guys a couple years ago, and I think that was a pretty. He recommends it, and like he didn't need his mind changed on anything, but he had still had quite an experience, So someone I trust very much can recommend volunteering. So that's my endorsement. If that's all I have. But thank you both for coming on today. I really appreciate it. The work that you do is really awesome. And honestly, I'm only more impressed just hearing a little bit about No More Deaths and the setup, as well as all the things you do, the tangible things. So optimism, because you have to be, is good. I'll take that. It's the new life motto. I'll take it. But yeah, thanks again for coming on today. It was nice talking to you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. You're listening to the Non-Serviam podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, why not subscribe over on our YouTube channel or on your favorite podcast platform. You can also follow us across social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Mastodon. If you're extra interested in seeing this project continue, consider becoming a patron over at patreon.com. But if you can't contribute financially, we still like you a whole lot. And you can help us out just by liking and sharing this episode or any other one that catches your fancy. As always, shout out to our existing patrons. Your support helps us reach a larger audience and helps keep this project alive. Thanks so much.